Hello everyone, welcome back to Milestone Gaming. My name is Malachi Gardner, and today I am going to be previewing Deck of Wonders by Furia. Now, real quick, this is not a full-on review. I'm going to be sharing some of my thoughts on the game, but this is not a full review. Maybe I'll do one of those later, but for now, this is just an overview of some of my thoughts, both positive and negative. But most of them are positive because I do like this game quite a bit. So what is Deck of Wonders? Well, Deck of Wonders is a legacy style card game for one player primarily, but you do have a variant in the rulebook that you can play two players cooperatively. In the game, regardless of whether you're playing with one person or two players, you are going to be using a deck of cards and you're playing cards from that deck to summon creatures and cast spells to defeat your opponent, who is actually also using the same deck. This works because there's two halves to each card, as displayed on the screen here, this Forest Troll. On one side, the top side, you have the player side. So when you draw this card from the deck and then play it, you're going to be looking at that side of the card. On the other side, when you rotate it, you are going to be seeing a slightly more evil version of that card, and that is the side that the enemies are going to be using. So when you draw the card from the deck on the enemy's turn, you're going to be looking at that side of the card, and those are the stats and abilities that that minion has when the enemy summons it. And the same thing goes for spells. They do different things based off of who plays it. If you play it, it does something that's good for you. If the enemy plays it, it does something that's bad for you and good for the enemy. In the game, you're going to be playing cards from the deck, and you're trying to deal damage to your opponent to reduce their health down to 0. Generally, you are going to be starting with 30 hit points, and then you're going to be dealing damage through spells, your creatures attacking, and then the enemies are going to be doing damage to you. If you reduce their health to 0, you win. If they reduce your health to 0, they win, and you lose. That is kind of a brief overview of Deck of Wonders. There's more going on, and if you'd like to find out more about this game, you can check out the game's Kickstarter page, which there'll be a link in the description, as well as if you click on that eye up in the top right hand corner, that'll take you to the Kickstarter page as well. Also included, when you click on that little eye button and in the description below, you will find a link to my playthrough of Deck of Wonders, where I beat up Colin pretty good. And you can watch that or read on the Kickstarter page to find out more about this game. But that's just a general overview, so now I'm going to get into some of my thoughts on the game. So starting with the positives. What do I like about Deck of Wonders? Well, first, I really like how the setup is short. This is a thing that I actually come back to a lot, and I do like when games have a short setup time. I like how you just be able to pull it off the shelf and quickly get it to the table, so there's not a long process like there is in some other games like Gloomhaven. I love Gloomhaven, but it sometimes takes a while to set it up, and so sometimes you might not want to go through all that setup, and so then you don't end up playing Gloomhaven, for example. Whereas if you have a game like Deck of Wonders that has a shorter setup time, you're more likely to play it because it's easier to set up. In the game, you are going to be building a deck before the game starts, and that can take some time. It's not too in-depth. It's not like building a deck for Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone, which are both games that share a very similar feel with this game. But the deck building in this game is not as intense as in Magic the Gathering, for example, and so you're going to be able to do it pretty quickly. And then the setup time in between games, like after you have your deck all set up, and you can use the preset deck for each of your games, that will allow you to even just bypass all of that extra setup time. And after you have that deck constructed, setting up the game is literally setting your health to 30, or 20 if you're fighting against Colin, and shuffling up the single deck, because you and your opponent both draw from the same deck. You only have one deck to shuffle. So I like the short setup, and then the playtime is very, very short. in my previous review, I was talking about Puzzle Dungeon, which is an excellent game by Brian Garber. And in that, I was saying how I really like the short playtime. It's 15 to 20 minutes after you get it down. Your first game might be 25 to 30 minutes, but after you start playing it a lot, it's going to be 15 to 20 minutes. And that is really nice, and I said how much I like how short the game is. It's one of my favorite short card games for one person. Now, with this, it's even shorter. It's 10 to 15 minutes. You can even get it shorter than that. Like 15 minutes is actually a long game, whereas 10 or even like 8 or 9 minutes is one of the more shorter games that you usually get games like that often. Starting out, your games might be a little bit longer than that, but once you come to grips with the rule sets and how your turns work and how the villain turns work, you're going to be able to get turns done very quickly, and you're just going to be able to plow through a game and get it done really quickly. So that is also very nice. Another thing I like is how, it being a legacy style game, you do have some stickers that you can place on cards, but the designer is being very specific in that you can always see what it was before. And these stickers are very minor, more like how Gloomhaven's enhancement system worked, where you have a card that does 2 damage, and then you put a +1 on it, and so now it does 3 damage, but you can still see the 2 that came before the +1, so that way you can go back and reset your game, or, I mean, the stickers don't really matter that much. In fact, the prototype I was given doesn't actually have any stickers, so the game works perfectly fine without any stickers of any kind, so you don't even need to use them. And the stickers might make it a little bit easier. I'm not sure exactly how they're all going to be balanced, but you can actually win just fine without using the stickers, like I did with my prototype here. In addition to occasionally changing your cards via stickers, you are also going to have a series of legacy packs, which you're going to be able to open up, and those are going to add extra components to the game. 2 of them are villains. You start with 1 villain, but you end up with 3 villains, which each have different playstyles and cards associated with them. And then you have a total of 9 other legacy packs, 3 corresponding to each villain. Each villain tells you how to open up those other packs of cards, and they will influence that particular villain, but then after you've played enough games with them, you will be able to actually bring the contents of those legacy packs and use them with the other villains. So start with just focusing on 1 villain, and then eventually you'll be able to use all the contents in all the legacy packs against any villain of your choice, which is cool. So I really like the stuff that are added inside the legacy packs. In fact, I actually think that after playing through the entire game and opening up everything and playing with everything, I actually think that I like the game a bit more after opening everything up. It's very fun to have like the mysteries of, okay, what's in this pack, and you open it up and you're really excited, but it's actually really fun after you have opened everything up, which is something that you really can't say about many other legacy games. This is one of the games that's more enjoyable, for me at least, after opening everything up, which I think is really cool. And so if you're worried about replayability, like getting this game and then after I played it a couple times, it's just going to be thrown in the garbage or whatever, it actually takes you a decent amount of time to open everything up, but then after you do, for me at least, it is more fun. So that is a really cool thing that I like about this, which you can't really say that about many other legacy games. Another thing I like about the game is the duality mechanic of the cards. So each card has 2 halves, like I said earlier, and you use one and your enemy uses another one, and that is very interesting. I don't really think I've seen that in any other card game, any other like single player card game where you're drawing from the same deck, but your cards do different things based off who draws it, and it's really cool here. So each side is slightly different. The enemy sides are more powerful than your side, but of course you actually can use a strategy and tactics to use your cards more effectively. And that's actually a large part of the game. You're playing against a more powerful opponent, but you have something that they don't have, which is tactics and strategy and being able to think and analyze things. A lot of being able to win the game is actually figuring out how to manipulate the enemy's AI in interesting ways. And it's really satisfying sometimes when you are able to basically trick 3 monsters to all attacking this one monster when only one of them really needed to fight that monster, but you make them all fight that monster, and then they're all defeated, and sure, they defeat your monster, but it's a 3-to-1 ratio, which just feels really nice. In fact, I actually was able to do that in my playthrough, and that felt really cool. That's a pretty big element in this game. You're fighting against a more powerful opponent, but you're smarter than they are. So I liked that as well. And along the same note, there's actually a lot of skill involved with this game. When I get to my negatives, I'm gonna tell you guys about a certain element with the game feeling swingy, but in the end, it's actually really, I was kind of surprised with how skill-based it was. And how do I know this? Well, for me, whenever I would open up a new villain, I would be losing constantly. Every single game, I'd be losing. But I would be able to figure something out with each villain, and then I would be able to win constantly. So I'd go from losing 100% of the time to winning 95% of the time, which also feels really cool because you feel like you actually accomplished something. It's not just you winning because of the luck of the draw, which can happen, but for the most part, you're gonna win because you learned from your mistakes and now you are a better player, which is just very satisfying. Being able to say, yes, I won because I am a better player. So that is another thing I really like. But no game is perfect, and here are some of the negatives that I have with the game. Alright, so first, the deck building is a bit wonky. The reason I say that is because of the duality mechanic. Like I said earlier, I think it's a really cool mechanic, and it is actually probably the biggest thing that sets this game apart. That you're both drawing from the same deck, and you need to deal with that, and your cards are different, so when you play cards, different from when your opponent plays the same card, which is cool. But it makes the deck building feel really weird. So, for example, suppose you see 3 cards. So you have these 3 cards that just work really well together and create a cool combo. So you put that in your deck. You swap out some other cards from the deck and you put in those cards there, and now you have this really cool combo in the deck. But your opponent also can use that. And it's interesting. So before I played it, I thought okay, this is gonna be interesting because I make this combo and then my opponent also gets to use it. That would be kind of cool. As it turns out, I don't actually like it that much. I kind of prefer just having my combo in my deck, and then the enemies have some combos in their deck, but they're separate. And I get to do my cool combo, and they get to do their cool combo, and hopefully I'll win in the end. With this, it can feel a bit swingy, because if I put this cool combo in my deck because I really think this combo is cool and I like these cards, so I put them in my deck, and then I play, and then my opponent gets that combo, and they just win. For example, that doesn't feel very fun. And it's like, okay, I put this thing in the deck so that I could do this, and then you ended up doing it? Or there is no you, I guess, it's the enemy. The enemy ended up doing that. And so then it can feel a bit off. In other games like Marvel Champions or The Lord of the Rings, the card game, both my Fantasy Flight games, you have your deck and you build your deck a certain way to react to what your enemy does. So you take a deck, you play against the enemy crushes you. Okay, well, I'll go back to my drawing board and tweak my deck a bit, or even make a completely different deck. And then I'll play that against it, and then, okay, it didn't work, so I try again and again and again. And that, to me at least, is what makes the living card game genre work. Or trading card games, or collectible card games, or expandable card games. You know, they're kind of all this, it's the same idea. It's all about the deck constructing. And I really like that. It's one of my favorite things to do inside games, to build my own deck and then crush my opponents with that deck. Or if it doesn't work, then I go back to the drawing board and then fix it, and then reiterate, make it better, and then win. With this, it's kind of this weird thing where you want to put in combos that help you, but are very unlikely to go off with your opponents. And so again, I don't want to spoil anything with certain things, but there's some cards that as you play, you'll be able to find out that these cards actually work really well together. And you want to put some of these cards in your deck because there's a combo that you can do with these cards that your opponent can't do. And so that is kind of cool. Like, I got this cool thing that I can do, but you can't. So you do that, but like really beyond that, it's not, okay, what cards can I put in here that will create a cool combo, a cool deck that I'll be able to use to defeat my opponents. It's more, okay, what cards are kind of fun to use? And that's not bad. That's actually cool, because I can take up the cards I don't like and put in cards I do enjoy playing. But it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel like an expandable card game should, with you going back to the drawing board and fixing your deck to beat your opponent. It's like its own thing. For me personally, I kind of feel like I just want to be using the preset decks that are included in the game. Each villain has their deck that they always use, and then your cards, they just tell you like which ones you should use. And I think that in a normal LCG, doing that just using the preset decks is usually not as enjoyable of an experience. I feel like with this game, creating your deck doesn't actually add that much to it because the enemy also uses that deck, and so just for me, I don't think that the deck building works all that well in this game. And so those are some of my thoughts on Deck of Wonders. All in all, I really like this game. I really like its fun and fast-paced gameplay that keeps you coming back for more as you improve your tactics and unlock cool new gameplay features. As always, my name is Malachi Gardner, and I hope you enjoyed this video discussing some of my thoughts on Deck of Wonders. If you are at all interested in this, feel free to check out my playthrough video of this game and the Kickstarter page for this game. Feel free to like and subscribe, and follow me on Instagram or on Facebook at Maelstrom Gaming. And I hope you all have a great day. Happy gaming!